The prophecy trope is trash.
Oh, my back.
What's shaking? My name's Cam. Welcome back to another video. How do you do, my lady? I can't do it. Fantasy tropes. They do be controversial. I am going to rank them. Insert joke about how my opinion is objective truth. Because it is. I'm excited to do this. It's obviously a completely original idea, never been done before. It's all by me, copyright TM, trademarked. I found this tier list by Marshmallow, and I'll link it below. Tell you what, why don't you, if you're on a computer, why don't you do it along with me? We can do it at the same time. Yeah, that's what she said. You can let me know if you got any different answers to me, and I can shame you for it, because we all know that I have the best undisputed takes in the fantasy literature world. We all know this. All right, let's just get this over with. That's what she said. Look at this. I'm like getting this set up, and they're really just out here putting hentai right on the page. Okay, here we go. So here are all of the tropes that Marshmallow has given us to rank. Let's do the chosen one first, because I did a video on this one very recently that was pretty much a defense for the chosen one trope, basically explaining why I think, well, first of all, explaining how and why I think it gets a bad rap, which is kind of fair, but also why I think it's still relevant and why I think it's still good and why I hope that it'll still be used in future fantasy. I'm going to put it in good because I think it's a good trope. I think the chosen one trope, as far as fantasy goes, is one of the top tier ones for wish fulfillment. We all like to think that one day we're going to wake up and find out that we're super special in some way, and what can be more special than finding out that the fate of the world rests on your shoulders, although realistically that would suck. That'd be the worst. I don't even like the responsibility of having to transfer the rent money, let alone save the world. I feel like the Lucky Novice is pretty closely tied with the Chosen One, but this is a specific aspect of the Chosen One that I actually hate. I really hate. Maybe not to the level of it being absolute trash, but I am going to put it in bad because I feel like this is kind of, I've been referring to this as the Kvothe effect, like Kvothe from Name of the Wind, basically where the protagonist is just inexplicably the best at everything. Same with the prince from The Prince of Thorns. What have we got, like a 16-year-old who just happens to be able to compete with seasoned warriors? Like, come on. I'm going to put witches in Take It or Leave It because they can either be really good or really bad. I really like it when witches are used to a very scary horror aspect, because the idea of witches is quite terrifying when you think about it. Like being able to hex or curse people with their worst nightmares is quite horrifying, but also witches can be pretty goofy. It's just a little bit goofy. I'm going to put dragons in good because dragons are good. The reluctant hero, again, ties in with the chosen one, the Lucky Novice. Another aspect of the chosen one I don't really like. I get being a reluctant hero is meant to make them seem, modest or humble, but I don't know, it just gets annoying at a certain point. Like, I keep using this as an example, but it's the most well-known one is Harry Potter, with 7 fucking books in, and he's still complaining relentlessly about being the chosen one. It's just like, shut up. Shut up, dude. Shut up. Amazing food is top tier. I'm putting that at the top because fantasy food, it's like one of the best parts of reading fantasy. Here's a question for you. What is your favorite food from any fantasy story whatsoever? It could be a book, could be a game, could be a movie, whatever. What is your favorite fantasy food? I was always fascinated by the idea of butterbeer or the ice cream from Kingdom Hearts 2. I'm going to put the quest in Take It or Leave It because that kind of feels like more of a story staple rather than a trope. The quest is just another way of saying the plot, really, when you think about it. Magic, I'm going to put in Can't Get Enough. I feel like that's another top tier one because there are a lot of good fantasy without magic. I suppose I was going to say Game of Thrones, although that's kind of there is kind of magic in there, but I think we all know what I'm talking about. Game of Thrones isn't like a fantasy that involves magic. Really, it's just a political fantasy where there are slightly magical elements. But I'm putting it in top tier because I absolutely prefer fantasy that involves magic. I'm going to put The Prophecy in absolute trash. That's the first one I'm putting in absolute trash because I never liked it. Even before I found out it was completely saturated and overdone, it seemed lame, man. Like, I was like, oh, okay, so the hero is the hero because why? Like, The Prophecy just seems like a cheap plot device. Like, the writer couldn't come up with an actual reason to have the hero be the hero, so they're like, because it's foretold. It's like, okay, foretold by who? The Oracle. And it's like, what importance does the Oracle have to the story? Because they foretold it. And it's like, it's a circle of pointlessness, you know? The Prophecy is usually a cheap trade-in for an actual motivation for the hero. The pseudo-European medieval setting. I'll put that in take it or leave it because I actually love it. I think it's fantastic. I think the European medieval setting is perfect for the fantasy atmosphere that we've built into that kind of societal expectation when it comes to fantasy storytelling. Sure. However, the reason I'm putting it in take it or leave it is because it's also like, I want to see different stuff. That was the main reason I read Black Leopard, Red Wolf, even though I ended up hating that book for completely different reasons. I'll leave a card up here for the video where I go into detail about why I didn't like Black Leopard, Red Wolf. But the reason I read that book is because of the promise of diverting completely from European fantasy to African-inspired fantasy. And it did do that. And that was one of the best parts about that book. And I would love to see more of that. And there is more of that coming out recently. There's been specifically a lot of Asian-inspired fantasy, which is just brilliant. Fantastic. The Here Comes the Cavalry twist. I know it's kind of a cliche. But I love it. I love it. The most obvious example is probably when Rohan comes to the rescue for, Gondor. But that is one of my absolute favorite things in a fantasy story, when all hope seems lost, even though, like, you kind of know in the back of your head that they're going to be okay. Narratively speaking, the characters are doomed. There's no way out of this. They're completely done in. And then super cheesy, like you hear the voice in the back. It's like,
start the party without me.
And then they turn around and it's that character that disappeared like 2/4 of the way into the story. And they're back and they've got an army and the tides have turned and it's just great. I love it. The Secret Heir. I'm going to have to put it in bad. Not because it kind of, again, a lot of these tie in with The Chosen One, but again, this kind of ties in with The Chosen One. It's kind of nice, the idea or the escapism of imagining that one day you wake up and find out that you're actually a long-lost prince or princess. That's fine. But I'm putting it in bad pretty much entirely just because of how insanely saturated that trope is now. I swear every YA fantasy written between the years of like 2015 to 2018, that was the plot twist, or that was the call to adventure, is that they find out they're secretly royalty. Every story had it. I wrote a fantasy story that I did it too, okay? I wouldn't do it again. Talking animals. I'll put it in take it or leave it. It kind of makes the story a bit cheesy, if you ask me. The Evil Overlord. You know what? I think it's good. I know it's very, very worn out at this point. I get that. But I still really like it. I like the danger and the mystery of like an evil with motivations that you can't quite figure out. Maybe an evil with motivations that can't be circumvented or talked around, like... the thing with the Evil Overlord over maybe just an emperor from a rival nation who you could talk to and try and make a treaty or a truce with, you can't do that with an Evil Overlord because they just want chaos. I like that. I know it's saturated, but I still like it. I'm going to put it in good. I do like when folktales are reinterpreted for fantasy, and admittedly, I think most fantasy uses like folktales and mythology, all that kind of stuff, in at least some capacity. But the stories that are explicitly reinventions of like fairy tales, that kind of stuff, like, Cinderella retellings or Snow White retellings, I'm not that big of a fan. In most cases where I've seen this done, I feel like you could have just made it your own completely original story, because they add so much original stuff to that fairy tale that they're reinterpreting that they should have just done their own thing, and then they could, claim it as a completely, entirely original work. I think The Mentor is good. again, I know it's overdone, but it's one of those tropes that I think have a lot of potential for doing it in many different ways, and I like it. I like the mentor. The waiting evil, I think that goes along with the evil overlord, although I'm not a big fan of when they pretty much have nothing to do with the story until the climax, so assuming that's what this is, I'm going to put it in bad. Recluse who lives in the woods. Love it. One of my favorite things. Especially when the recluse who lives in the woods is like super enigmatic and kind of manic and crazy. I like that. Strict good versus evil. I think strict good versus evil is kind of lazy, so I'm going to put that in bad. I think always more fascinating when there are shades of grey to both sides. Like when there are good characters who have a little bit of bad, and when there are bad characters that have a little bit of good. And I know that's kind of ironic considering I put the evil overlord in good, but let's just pretend they're two completely separate things. Cursed Beauty, literally the only example I can think of for this is Beauty and the Beast, and that movie slaps, so I'll put it in good, I guess. The Powerful Artifact, let's close the door on that one. I'm gonna put it in bad. I think it's been done, you know? I think we can have powerful objects, you know, like the shard gear from Stormlight Archive, and that's fine, but having one single object that can completely turn the tide of the war or the conflict, let's move on from that. I think that's, it's starting to feel a little bit lazy, that's all. The scene in a tavern, love it. Again, with the forest, I know having a big forest scene and a tavern scene in a fantasy book is like a staple, and it's been done a lot. I want it to keep being done because those are my favorite parts. In a lot of fantasy stories where it's all doom and gloom, the tavern scene is usually a breath of fresh air, so I like that. The homogeneous species, the species that are all basically clones of each other, they're all extremely similar. I'll put it in take it or leave it. I feel like that again is kind of necessary to a fantasy story, to be honest. I feel like the homogeneous species is something that really shows us that this is a fantasy world and not just a parallel of our world, so I can appreciate that. So yeah, there's my list. Again, let me know if you had any different answers and I'll go ahead and shame you immediately because you're wrong. Sorry, you're wrong. I think it's funny the only one that ended up in absolute trash is the prophecy, because that's where it belongs. The prophecy trope is trash. That, my good friends, will just about do it for today, but don't worry, I'll be back. I'm doing more videos. I make lots of videos about fantasy and horror books, so if that's your thing, don't leave. Please don't go. Thanks for watching, especially for watching through the whole video. You're the best. You're my favorites. See you in the next one. Catch ya.